and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I am your host, Randy Elaine. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Kris Ingersoll. Kris, how you doing tonight?
So good, Randy. So good for a couple of reasons. I mean, of course, always a pleasure to be podcasting with you, especially in a week where we're doing more than one. Hello, 2 nights in a row. But we got some great guests tonight. I don't want to spoil anything just yet, but I am stoked about the guests and stoked about the content. This was a mini-sode we dreamed up when we were first vibing on the topic at hand. I'm grateful we have finally got things together so we could really dig deep. How are you, man?
I'm doing really well. I just came from a little pre-4th of July celebration, a little music down at the town gazebo. It was a very lovely evening
That
over
looked
there.
nice. Looked lovely.
Absolutely. And I've been having a great month overall because you and I have both been off doing a ton of other podcasts, racking up guest spots. We've done some together. We've done some stuff separately. I'm sure you'll talk about some of your podcasting, but thinking of this X-Men pod, I was feeling a little bit like Jean Grey, like hearing you on another podcast. It's like, you're off communing with some other souls, telepathically. However, fortunately, my response to that is not jealousy. It is excitement because my co-host for this pod is just a true podcaster, killing it all over the place. And I'm just really proud to be with you here tonight.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you, man. Love podding with you. Yeah, as I mentioned, we've got 2 fantastic guests with us tonight to talk about X-Men 97, the first of which it is my great honor to introduce. This is a name our loyal listeners will have heard before. And if you're curious to know more about my best pal, brother from another mother, Blake Coleman, I suggest you go back and listen to the Equilibrium pod, where I absolutely gush about this gentleman and all that he means to me in the world. He is a fantastic father and husband. He is an officer of the law, and he is a damn good friend. Blake and I go back to 14 years old, I think I was. Best friend in the world, my brother, Blake Coleman. Welcome to the pod, buddy.
What do you say? Do you want to play, gentlemen? Happy to be here. Tough to follow that intro up, but I will do my best to bring my knowledge on the facts at hand and share with you gentlemen in this wonderful pod that I've listened to quite a few times already, and we'll obviously do so moving forward in the future. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Blake. I've just got to thank you in person for bringing the film Equilibrium into my life. It's really changed things for me, just as it once changed things for a young Kris many moons ago. Although, Kris, my only note on your intro is we don't have loyal listeners. We have loyal podlings.
Podlings.
Yeah, as of our Dark Crystal podcast. If you're one of those folks out here who listens to us, you are a podling, which is, the best title you could possibly have, because these are the ultimate party people from the film The Dark Crystal. And it's great to be part of the family. But podlings are not just listeners, they are our guests and returning guests in our podcast family. So on that note, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce returning guest John Aspler. You may remember John from our very first Lost episode in our Lost in Lit series, which as of the time of this recording is technically still just a 1-episode series, but we're cooking up something very special for the upcoming anniversary of the Lost pilot. More on that later. But yeah, John is an incredibly thoughtful student of media and popular culture. He also has a PhD in neuroscience and one of the smartest folks we know. John, thanks for joining us. How you doing tonight?
Thanks so much. You're far too kind. I am just delighted to be here chatting again about pop culture things that I'm passionate about. Do not be afraid, because this isn't my first time at the X-Men Are Dead rodeo. Just very excited to have this conversation.
That Lost tease, I think, was a lovely tease, but totally undersells. Randy isn't cooking up something small. He's got a whole showstopper that he is constructing so he can win this summer bake-off that is podcasting.
Yeah, it's definitely very much one of those, they never asked if they should do it kind of ideas, but we're gonna go for it anyway. But listen, we are here tonight to talk about the recent X-Men 97 series. We realize we're a little bit behind the initial wave of excitement and interest in this show. But due to both time constraints and the fact that we wanted to let this thing settle in, because I think we were all really in it, there was a lot of recency bias with this show because it was so fun and special and different from a lot of the other Marvel content that we were getting. But some months went by, and I think we found that we're all still pretty pumped and excited about the show. So I'm really excited to be here chatting about it tonight. But before we go too much further, in case you missed that series or you weren't sure whether it was for you, I'm going to hit you with a ton of spoilers. I'm going to do one of my customary recaps. And then I hope that our panelists will critique it. Or maybe if I'm lucky, I'll just get to fish for compliments, which is occasionally how this section ends. And quite frankly, I don't mind it. All right. So X-Men 97, here we go. We meet up with our X-Men about a year after the events of the original 90s animated series. Cyclops seems to be holding down the fort as the de facto and assumed leader of the X-Men. The team quickly has their hands full dealing with the ongoing threat of a mutant database, angry pushback on some perceived gains in goodwill for mutants, and the reemergence of Sentinels. Just as the dust settles on an epic battle with a new crop of Sentinels, old foe Magneto appears to claim control of Charles Xavier's school, team, and estate. Magneto convinces everyone that he will try to run things in the spirit Charles Xavier would have wanted. Nevertheless, chaos ensues. For instance, Cyclops finds out he is married to a clone of Jean Grey who was under the thrall of Mr. Sinister. Once she is freed from his influence, it makes for a very awkward love triangle, or love rectangle if you consider the fact that Logan, aka Wolverine, gets a long-awaited kiss from OG Jean, the love of his life. Storm is depowered by a domestic terrorist called the Executioner, falls in love with the mutant who designed the technology that depowered her. She is also tormented by a personal demon and ultimately restored to Omega threat status. Rogue rekindles an old romance with Magneto, the one person who can touch her without activating her powers. Gambit does his best to tamp down his jealousy under that layer of signature Cajun charm. Even Jubilee is in the mix, but she is largely ignored so that she can play mentor and shopping buddy to reluctant mutant Roberto da Costa. Magneto's leadership helps mutants establish their own state in Genosha, and the High Council of Mutants try to install Magneto as their king. He agrees, under the condition that Rogue gets to join him as queen. She briefly agrees, but realizes her love for Gambit runs deeper than her physical connection with Magneto. Before we can deal with any of that trauma, Genosha is destroyed, and Gambit gives his life, neutralizing the immediate threat. Rogue goes rogue to find the responsible parties. She gives up on politics and niceties. All of this drama draws Charles Xavier back to Earth and away from his life as the consort to a fascist space empress. By the time he arrives, though, it turns out that most of the human race have been converted to sleeper agent super sentinels. Cyclops and Madeline's baby is now grown-up mutant warrior Cable. He travels back in time to save his future. It turns out that a sentinel-human hybrid supervillain named Bastion is the real mastermind. It's cool, though, because Magneto shuts off Earth's electricity. But then it's very quickly not cool because apparently the Earth is going to collapse if Magneto doesn't undo the damage. Nevertheless, Magneto is sick of saving the Earth, and he wins Rogue and Roberto to his cause. They fuck off to an asteroid. The other X-Men fight them until Magneto rips the adamantium from Wolverine's body and Professor X takes over Magneto's mind. Rogue and Roberto say sorry, and then they all fight Bastion. Charles psychically bonds with Magneto and convinces him not to crush the Earth. The X-Men combine powers to save Earth from the collapsing asteroid, but a bunch of them get sucked through time to the distant past and future. They meet versions of Apocalypse. We end on a stinger of Apocalypse in 1997, pulling one of Gambit's playing cards from the ashes. It seems he has found his angel of death. All right, panelists, please pop in to critique me, improve on things, and dig deeper into anything that deserved more time.
I just have a question because I'm always mildly confused by timey-wiminess. And so was Cable going back in time to save his future, or was his future bad and he's trying to stop his future? Is Bastion aware of the future and because Bastion has some time travel stuff happening too, right? He has knowledge from future Sentinels. So, okay. I think I've already answered my question, but please jump in and tell me how this works.
I think given the lack of hand raising, the answer is clear, but not. I think we see a lot of him referencing that, like, he will take over eventually. Everything will die. He's in charge. He wins. Like, there is that inevitability if, we don't figure it out. And I don't think he's there to offer that relief either of like, here's what we do to stop it. There is no Marty McFly moment of, take the hand out of the cookie jar, everything's fixed. It's literally, you know, basically I'm here to help, but I don't necessarily have the answer. Is kind of how I took it.
I think what caught me most confused was his intention to get back to that one event in Genosha. And like, why, at what point in the future, what was happening that he finally decided it was time to go back and try to prevent this thing from happening? And I guess ostensibly that is a horrific future where we've lost, right? And mutants have been wiped out, but I don't think that was made clear enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main takeaway, especially if you for some reason decided to sit through that synopsis, not having watched X-Men '97, is a hell of a lot happens in 10 episodes. At times we're moving through like entire comic arcs in 25 minutes and things like that. And I think if there were any negative critiques of the show, they were tied to just like the speed and the pace of some of the storytelling. But I think ultimately we all came out quite high on the series because it was able to take all of that drama and trauma. I think I even, subconsciously swapped those words a couple times during my synopsis. It was just a rich text to engage with. And that personal connection we make is what this is really all about. So I think that's where I turn things over to Kris.
So glad you did, man. I was excited to talk about X-Men '97, not just because this 10-episode run was such a joy, but because there is so much nostalgia tied to the series in general and to the X-Men overall. And so for these guys gathered here, I'm excited to talk about our early connections, our early memories. What got you into the X-Men? Let's start with John.
Yeah, so 92 to 97, I was probably 3 to 8. I don't think I would have started watching it when I was 3 years old, but I have very distinct memories of watching the animated series as a young child and playing X-Men with friends and being delighted that everyone fought over Wolverine and I got to be Cyclops. So that was very fun for me. Lone Cyclops fan as a kid.
Okay.
I feel like X-Men 97 has done some Cyclops storytelling justice, so I'm excited to dig into that. But this was really my introduction to superheroes overall, maybe along with the 98 Spider-Man TV show or the 94 Spider-Man TV show as well. And I love animated shows. As a kid, I loved animated shows. And this got me into comics. I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but this is a wall of, or at least one shelf of full X-Men comics. I still have them, always loved them. And the thing that always struck me, and that still today I remember more than any other episode, was just watching the pilot and having them kill Morph. Because I had no comic knowledge at the age of 4 or 5, right? I'm not reading comics. This is a full-fledged X-Men. He's not a character that was written for the pilot to be killed in the pilot, or I should say they now, at the time he. And I was just so struck as a child that you could do that you could kill a character, and then that could motivate storytelling going forward, that it was serialized, and that it reverberated throughout the rest of the season, that this one character's death motivated things later on. I'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, I mean, we were privileged as children for some of the cartoons that we got. This is, it always has been, fairly mature storytelling. What about you, Blake? When did the X-Men come walking into your life?
I don't know if I have an exact year, but a lot of what John already touched on definitely was true for me as well. I am a couple, maybe a few years older than John. I will say that. So I had the privilege of having an older brother who, was into some cool stuff before I was. So I'm sure it had something to do with him watching it, me jumping in. Um, if I'm 100% honest, that iconic intro music, just that squealing guitar, nothing was more 80s than just, and you were so ready to go. If you have never seen the show, you were like, what is about to happen in my living room? And how do I lock in? And then similar, I think the first time I ever played a video game where you had like the freedom to climb up a 2-dimensional wall for SNES as Wolverine, and then Beast could freely cling to the ceiling and had that, kind of 3-dimensional movement in a linear 2D game, really captured me. And just, similarly, some of the interactions between, Marvel as a whole, and then, oh, Wolverine's in this comic, and, this guy's here, and they would kind of pluck from different storylines and show up. Um, Daredevil had Spider-Man show up every once in a while. Then, all of a sudden Gambit would be in an episode of different shows, and you could kind of grow to love some of these characters that weren't, necessarily just in their own show or just on their own show together. They, show up in different universes, which we now, have been spoiled so hugely in media, with crossovers and things of that nature. But early on, the X-Men, I felt, really dipped their toe in that pond and knocked it out of the park by being kind of all over the place.
Yeah, so well said. I'm not at all surprised now that you say that, I guess, that they were the first superhero kind of team to make it in this modern world of comic book storytelling on film, right? With that great blockbuster X-Men right at the start of the millennium. Not surprised either that you have the video game connection there, my gamer friend. Yeah, that game ruled. What about you, Randy, my illustrious co-host? Do you have any like young memories attached to the Uncannies?
Yeah, so like Blake, I've got a few years on our buddy John. Not too many. I just hit my 40th birthday a couple weeks ago.
Hey, happy
So
birthday.
thank you. I'm doing okay. But no, I'd say number one, it's just, why did this show stick with me more so than other animated series? It was the seriousness of that storytelling. Like, wait, what? A political assassination? Legislation? Like, I don't understand any of this. I'm a young child, but like, I feel like someone's trying to tell me the truth. I don't feel like I'm being talked down to. And that was really appealing to me. I think I also had a couple of friends who were a little bit more into it than me. My most visceral memories when I think of X-Men is I think of it being the fall. And I think of like getting home from the soccer game, right? And like rolling down the long soccer socks, like getting those shin guards off. If you had an early game, maybe grabbing a bowl of that early morning cereal and sitting back to watch the X-Men. And then, yeah, just also some vague memories of the Sega Genesis edition of the game. I don't know if that was identical to the Super Nintendo one or not. I never owned it, but several of my friends did. And I believe Gambit was one of the playable characters, if I'm not mistaken. That was always my choice. I'm fairly certain I never made it past the second or third level on those visits to my friends' houses. But I love the experience of like stepping into the character. Yeah, absolutely.
This is going to be terrible for podcasting, but I hold in my hands my still copy of the X-Men Sega Genesis video game. Yeah, I have it. Not only do I have it, I had it in the closet right behind me, like on hand, because this is still a game that I'll revisit for the sheer nostalgia and the joy. It is much like that SNES version. You did get to have that great like opening credits, like the beginning of the video game before you were even into a level. You could interact with the space, start playing around, and of course you were Wolverine. Maybe not you, John, but the rest of us were Wolverine. So yes, I think
Or Gambit.
Gambit. I already knew I wasn't cool enough for Gambit. Even back then, I knew I wasn't swaggy enough for Gambit. But I think my answer truly is a combination of Blake and John's experience, because I didn't read comics as a kid. I've come into comics as more in my adulthood, kind of end of high school, early college. I began to really read graphic novels. So it was just those great cartoons of our childhood. I love that 94 Spider-Man. I adored that opening guitar riff on X-Men, the animated series. The only thing that could get you more hyped was the Crossfire commercial. Shout out to Crossfire for my young friends.
You'll get caught up in the...
Yes.
Crossfire.
I knew Blake had it. I knew I didn't, and I knew Blake did. Thank you, sir. So yeah, I won't belabor the point, but I loved these cartoons as a kid, and they introduced me to all of these characters. They introduced me to this kind of mature storytelling that could happen within a package that appears to be for kids. It's superheroes, and it's fun, and it's imaginative, and it's also deep, and it's poignant. I think at the same time I was watching Batman in the animated series, and the idea of like a part 1 and part 2 cartoon story was like mind blowing at the time. That I was like, an episode would end and I couldn't wait for the next episode the next day because it was the continuation of the same intense, high stakes story.
I want to jump in and continue to dig into our personal connection to the X-Men and that original animated series. So, Kris, I'm actually going to throw this one right back to you. And what I want to know is, up into the present, that original experience with the X-Men, has it influenced like your interests or style in any way in the following years?
Yeah, I think, as I matured and my connection with these stories matured, I began to appreciate those deeper storylines more, the subtext within the fun superhero context, right? And soon I began to understand the X-Men as the kinds of heroes that I could align with. All of our heroes fight evil. The X-Men were fighting for a group of very specifically vulnerable people, but going about it in such a way that was intentionally good, for lack of a better word, right? Like Magneto and the X-Men, they want the same thing, and I think that's rare, right? They both want safety for mutants. And for me, that was so important for the kind of person that I want to be in terms of how I think about wielding power in the world, how I think about advocating for the vulnerable. It isn't about putting a boot to the neck of the oppressors by any means. That's no better, right? And so the X-Men for me were early archetypes or these types of heroes that I knew I would come to align with more and more.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Randy? You dare to answer next before we go to the guests?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep this kind of focused on my interest in media in the present. We live in a world that is quite saturated with superhero stories. Now, I ate my Saturday morning breakfast cereal. I watched my X-Men. I was kind of into it. I never really read the comics. My dad was not a big nerd in this particular way, at least not about comic books and things like that. Baseball cards, sure. But he was doing his best to like play along with this interest. He bought me a comic book in 1993, so I've got one issue of one X-Men comic book that I think I read and found was interesting, but I did not find myself consuming all of it. And looking back on that a couple months ago, I managed to find that comic book tucked away in the basement, and I think the themes were just beyond me. Like they were too heavy for me in 1993. I wasn't quite ready for them yet. But then you got that X-Men 2000 or 2001 film, whenever that first Hugh Jackman vehicle was released. And that really brought me into this new world. Because it's not a perfect film, but it caught the grittiness of this world. It had the ultimate fan casting with Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier. We all saw The Next Generation and noticed he looked exactly like our favorite cartoon character. I was also getting like a middle school education, and my early high school education was really heavy on the Holocaust. So that introduction to Magneto just destroying the fences at a concentration camp, like really still has a grip on my heart to this day, even if some of my sense of what that all means has evolved in a lot of ways. That was just so powerful. And to this day, I want my superhero stories to be grounded in something really human and real. It doesn't mean that they can't, travel to distant planets. But I care more about the human drama and emotion at the center of it more than anything else. And I think I can tie that all the way back to the X-Men always appealing to me. Blake, are the X-Men still a part of like you, your style, your interests, your media consumption?
For sure. My earliest like boy infatuation with superheroes of any kind. I think you were either a Batman or a Superman guy as a young kid. It was my house was a big Superman house. After Superman, I don't know what it was, what did it, how it happened, because obviously the internet wasn't what it is now, or wasn't, period. I was a big Daredevil guy. We had a smoke shop in my hometown. I used to go there after the Boys and Girls Club. They'd let, a certain group of certain age kids, I think you had to be like 7 or 8 to walk up there with one of the chaperones, and they'd let us go.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy that owned the smoke shop had this awesome collection of comics that he sold. He had no idea what they were worth, didn't care. I think it was like 10 cents a comic, unless it was like a big deal. And he knew it was like, this issue number one, it would be behind the counter for like $3 whole, which, nowadays I'm sure would sell for much more. So in Daredevil, there was a few times, didn't happen a lot, but Wolverine was there. Had an early, like as I'd already mentioned prior, had an early connection with Wolverine, and then kind of what you guys have both touched on, everyone had touched on thus far, is like it almost had that like darkness and like macabre nature to the series. They weren't, nothing was off limits, and not only did they touch on it, they would show you, and you would, it would draw out that raw emotion. I mean, that Holocaust scene is unbelievable, and the bending of the fences, and just his ability to just have that raw power to just do whatever he wanted to do at any given point in time. You knew, like, okay, like this guy could do whatever he wants, but I'm going to get these guys out. I'm going to save my people. And then, yeah, just like touching on little aspects like that, the tattoo on the arm of, Magneto in one episode, many years later, just little things they weren't afraid to touch on, made it so easy to personalize with. And then each character being so unique and so their own hero and so their own person. Little quips in between each other in the hallway, like, hey, Wolverine's leaving again. We don't know where he's going, but he's on his bike and he's out of here. And you're like, oh no, where's he going? And he'd be back a half episode later, but for a time you were like, oh, he's gonna, because the show would take away from you. So you did fear there would be a consequence anytime someone left. But yeah, it was so unique in that same way that you guys kind of both touched on, that it really grasped me and pulled me in. And the theme song. Come on.
Yeah. Shout out to the smoke shop in Stoneham. Love that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Right next to Brothers Pizza, which is now also a relic and gone, which is
Now, John, I think you kind of started pivoting into this question a little bit when you revealed that bookshelf behind you, but do you have any additional thoughts on, how the X-Men still influence you in the present, as an academic and an academic researcher, or, perhaps in less sophisticated ways as well?
All of the ways, definitely lots of unsophisticated ways, no question. I mean, I love these comics, no question. I haven't read all of them. I have some of these on my wall that I'm, getting to at some point. But I probably wouldn't be the kind of comic or superhero fan I am today if it weren't for the 90s animated series, no doubt. One of the things that really struck me about the kind of TV shows I like today outside of superhero content is that the 1970s to early 90s era of X-Men comics, which is by the writer Chris Claremont, is well known for specifically being deeply melodramatic. And that is the era that influences and informs certainly the original 90s TV show, and it continues to inform a lot of the stories in X-Men 97. And I love large ensemble dramas with messy, complex characters who have a million different motivations. And sure, they also have many different alternate universe children and future children and past children and all kinds of weird ways that comic book and superhero and magic and science fiction can lead you to very strange iterations of those kinds of stories. But yeah, I adore large ensemble melodramas like Lost, obviously. And I feel like I probably can't actually draw a straight line from X-Men the Animated Series to Lost, but I kind of want to. The serialization, the large ensemble cast, the mysteries, the strangeness, I love it all. And otherwise, yeah, everything you've all said already. Certainly, Kris, what you were talking about at some point realizing that the values of the comic aligned with your own values. I think that this, for me, was a big reason why I was a much bigger fan of Marvel as a kid than DC. And, not to speak to the values of DC, Superman's great. Love Superman. I thought it was really cool. The era I was reading, he was sort of very big on pacifism. And I thought that was a very cool approach to that kind of superheroism. But yeah, I just liked that the X-Men were there to protect, the folks who couldn't protect themselves, and really there to fight, not just supervillains, at least by the time, the 90s came around and we were there, but really, complex characters like Magneto, and then also, humans and the things they were trying to do to the mutants. So I was all in on all that stuff.
Yeah. Love that. It's important, this media that we all love. It's crazy they're able to do this with kids, quote unquote, kids stuff. That just will continue to blow me away. So we love this, right? We loved X-Men before. We loved X-Men 97 in all of its 10 episode glory. But tell me objectively, did it have any flaws? Blake, I'll come to you. Anything that just stuck in you first time around?
I think kind of in the same way that it used to lend itself. I mean, I've complained to you recently. I'm live watching Arrow, which I won't relate to the series. There's so many times where you're like, you need the episode to get to where it needs to go, so you do the thing that the writer would do to get it there, and you don't really care about what happens in that space in between. So you're like, I need the characters to feel this way or be at this point in the plot. So I'm just gonna like have Storm be next to a transformer that gets blown up by a rogue laser, and it just completely incapacitates her for like 35 seconds. Just little things like that, which like inherently were a part of the original series, way back in the day. So like in a sense, they didn't change that, but just tiny little things like that, where like, these super like unbelievably all, godlike powerful, especially her, we're just like thwarted by like this one, like, oh, like, then they fall down and what have you. Other than that, someone will bring something up that I'm sure I'll be able to give a golf clap to, but I can't think of one like glaring, angry moment. So I'll let whoever goes next.
I think that's great. I think there is definitely that convenient storytelling going on. And I think in a world where you have superheroes, especially X-Men, where you can always kind of pull out an X-Men with a power to suit your need in the story, there's a ton of that convenient storytelling. Yeah. And I have loved those like in real time reactions to Arrow like a decade later that everybody else watched the show. It's been great. John, let's go to you, man. Any flaws for you in X-Men 97?
So for the original series, I think that sort of kind of notoriously the animation is not so great. And obviously as a child, I would not have noticed it. In retrospect, of course, compared to what we have today, you notice it. But like there are just little things like, cells are missing or something strange happens in a particular shot. So this is sort of a thing that is known about the series. But the storytelling is so good. And of course, as a kid, I was so, blown away by it. I definitely could not and did not have any problems with it. It's also a show that like, and this is the same complaint as X-Men 97. It blows through plot so fast. Sometimes it does that really well, and sometimes it doesn't work as well. I think for me in X-Men 97, episode 3, the one with the Goblin Queen, is the one that suffers the most from speeding through plot a little too burning through it. I know, Randy, you've already referred to this, but I still can't hate the episode because the payoff for it with Cable and everything that happens later on, even Mr. Sinister, like it's impossible to not at the very least have some appreciation for that episode and what it does. So yeah, those are minor complaints really. I think they're both excellent series.
Yeah, I think those, again, fair critiques, right? I think more than one person commented on the pacing of this season, especially if you're a comic book reader and some of these storylines are familiar and you want to see them take the time to flesh those things out, but they have got a story to tell. Randy, anything to add?
Yeah, so I'll say of the classic series, I think sometimes the original suffered a little bit from just coming out of a more cynical era, where like this show's partly put together to sell toys. And it almost feels like an accident that it was so good, and maybe they didn't always know what they had. Maybe they didn't treat the voice actors as well as they could have. They've been getting a little victory lap with X-Men 97 recently, which is great. But some of them have aged out of the roles and things like that, like the Jubilee voice actress. And while I don't remember them as well, I know for every like deep political assassination episode. We also did have like just some sillier, goofier, like this is an early 90s cartoon sort of thing that didn't work as well. And then I was going to say this for hindsight is 2020, but I think we're kind of doing a good job hitting this right now. So I'm just going to throw in for X-Men 97. Um, I was mostly down with the fast pace. As someone who hasn't read the comics, like that episode 3, it worked pretty well for me. Like I knew a lot was happening, but I wasn't aware of like the specific lost possibilities of that storyline, which I'm sure were rich and thoughtful and wonderful.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I don't like some of the stuff is not rich and thoughtful in comic book form. It's deeply silly and weirdly paced as well.
I don't know. I heard that Daredevil fights a vacuum cleaner. Is that true? Because that sounds pretty impressive to me.
I don't know, Blake.
I'll check the zeitgeist at some point and pull through the catalog, but I can't directly reference what you're saying unless we're making a Daredevil Dustbuster reference and it's going
Fair.
over my head.
But
It's
but yeah,
not right there.
but yeah, for an X-Men 97 flaw, I think one plot moment that they did so much good work to earn was Rogue turning heel near the end there. And I was saddened by it, but also excited for it because so much work went into it. And then all of a sudden, one episode later, with little to no explanation, I guess maybe regret that Logan was hurt. Rogue's just completely back on the team, like 110%. And that was one I wish they'd been more patient with. Like, I wish that was still hovering over our heads going into the next season. But yeah, overall, this was a tour de force and an incredible season of television. Kris, any thoughts on flaws of the original and/or the X-Men 97?
I'll leave the original alone. I love buying toys. I still do.
Mm-hmm.
As for this season, though, I wasn't so caught up on the pacing of something like Goblin Queen, for instance, because to your point, John, they're doing that quickly so that Madeline Pryor can matter later in the series, right? So Cable can come back and that can matter. I have more of an issue with Motendo. This is the flaw for me. Like, Randy, you referenced those like one-off episodes where you have to just have some fun, right? It's got to be kids, right? At the end of the day, there's teenagers involved, and it is a celebration of all the things that come with that. I think the reason that folks love the X-Men is because you do spend time with them socially, and that matters. But this episode didn't work for me. A lot of this Jubilee Sunspot storyline doesn't end up paying dividends. I think that they included Sunspot as a great character for Jubilee to play off of, and they could have been ripe for some interesting storytelling, but there was too much else going on. And so in the grand scheme of the season, Motendo just feels like true nostalgia fodder in the worst way. Like I think the overall critique this series could get was that it was just a nostalgia play, which I refute. I think that they're doing worthwhile storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But that episode 4, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it could have paid off if they had involved Jubilee in the end game, but it was like they kind of forgot about Jubilee because I was actually into this connection with an older version of herself. But yeah, it just ellipsed into nothingness, which was a bummer.
If it was a 20 episode season, what a fun episode that is. Not 1 out of 10. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Real quick, not to jump over anybody, but to jump over somebody. The reintroduction of Professor X, who we start the series off, they just hit you with this bomb. And whether you're, whether it's canon, whether it's in the novels, whether it's in the, the scripts, etc., you're like, oh my God, he's you're in tears almost, maybe, who knows? And then later they're just like, hey, by the way, this is Xavier on his little alien planet. Let's catch up with him with his robot legs and his.
Yeah, he's all walking around and stuff. Like, we're just supposed to buy it. Yeah, I agree.
No thanks, but it got you where you needed to be. So again, like, pick it up, put it down, and forget about it. But yeah, that kind of drove me nuts.
I'll
let you continue.
I completely hear you. I like the payoff is where it goes, but I think that particular episode is challenging. And maybe just because we're talking about payoff, just to sort of say one last thing about hindsight is 2020. I think that the finale, while I generally liked it, had a few moments that didn't land for me. We're talking about the sort of unhealed turn of Rogue, already, but just like the maybe we can be nice to Bastion and it'll be fine. I get that it's true to the values. It didn't feel like that's where that should have gone in that moment. And I'm still not so sure ultimately how I feel about like Xavier and Magneto's mind for an extended period of time and then Magneto going, okay, I'll save the day. I guess it's sort of a self-actualization moment or maybe not actualization, but some sense of introspection through Xavier's help. But it kind of comes across like Xavier's like, now do these things, please, and using his mind powers a little bit. So some of the finale didn't totally pay off for me. But again, I love it. It's a fantastic show. So
I understand that we don't want, Magneto just using blind violence, but like we came out of a horror movie where like it seemed like a pretty significant percentage of Earth's population was secretly clicking on evil websites about how they hate mutants and then being genetically engineered into killer robots. So like I think we needed to like sit with Magneto's choice a little bit longer there. Felt like a little more justified to me than maybe some of his previous actions in the past. All right, folks, we've had a chance to dig into our personal connections to X-Men, the original animated series, all related X-Men properties, and we even dug into X-Men 97 and some things we might have fixed about it. But right now, we want to show our love for this series. We want to dig deep into what it means to us, what's so important about it. We're going to treat this series like a piece of great literature, but that doesn't mean that we can't have fun. If you are a podling out there, you know that Kris and I are in the middle of hot draft summer. We had a Nick at Night draft. We recently took part in a top secret Batman related draft. More details to follow later on. Drafting may or may not have something to do with that Lost podcast that's coming up that I teased earlier on. And we're going to do some drafting tonight because normally on Media Lit, we focus in on one episode at a time. But we're trying something different and looking at a full series. It's going to take us all night to get through all of our usual questions. So instead, what we are going to do is each draft our own little mini X family based on some of our favorite characters from this X-Men 97 series. So imagine the Summers family. You've got Jean Grey. You've got Cyclops. You've got Cable. They're the Summers clan. And one of the most fun sequences from this series, they managed to escape a bunch of killer robots in the family Porsche. So what we are going to do is imagine that we have our own family Porsche, and we are each going to fill it with 3 of our favorite X-Men. As we throw an X-Man up for discussion and draft them into our Porsche, the rest of the panel is welcome to chime in. All right, Blake, you're going to kick us off with the first overall pick in the draft. Who's going to fill out? Who's your first person riding shotgun in that Porsche?
So it would be easy to go to like a Pinnacle member to go, the Keystone. I'm going to go a slightly different angle. I'm going to go just one of my favorite dudes, one of the best uses in cinematic space, both in the cartoon and in the movies. Thinking I might be taking someone from someone here. I'll take Nightcrawler first.
Oh, it's a perfect pick. Carry on.
Yeah. Much to the behest of yourself and perhaps maybe even more than just yourself. Just what an unbelievable piece of both that series, just in general, his character arc in the movies. He's so kind to everyone. He's this, religious minded, monk who, seeks solace and finds himself and learns how to deal with what he's done to others, and being this demon in literature and, German folklore. Just such a cool character, and just the ability. I mean, hey, the Porsche's about to explode. No worries. We're all fine. We're out of here. Is, an invaluable thing to have on your team if we're looking at it in that sense as well. Just such a cool dude.
Yeah, I love that. I promise I won't chime in on every single character, but Nightcrawler 100% was going to be my first overall pick. And like, listen, I only pulled one quote from the series that I feel like I have to talk about tonight, and it's from our guy Nightcrawler in episode 5. Gambit is, kind of feeling sorry for himself. Does he deserve to be with Rogue or not? He's in pain. He's aware of the darkness of his own past and all the things he's done wrong, and maybe he deserves this. And Nightcrawler says one of the wisest things that anyone has ever said on television or in a film anywhere when he says, "There is no love without sin. Love is best measured in what we forgive." And my jaw dropped to the floor when he said that, because it was such a beautiful sentiment. Because of course none of us are above fault, or folly or mistake. The fact that Nightcrawler gets that and is like the ultimate friend and mentor, phenomenal pick, Blake.
Thank you much. Happy to have him.
So I didn't get my guy Nightcrawler. However, I get to pick someone pretty amazing and excellent. I'm a little bit torn between two folks here, so I'm gonna choose. I think the spirit of the exercise is I was trying to lean a little bit more on X-Men '97. If I were basing this strictly on the animated series, the original animated series, I think I'd go in a different direction. But with the number 2 overall pick, I'm gonna take Rogue. Not only is Rogue incredible, dynamic, full of spirit and energy, but the moments in this series when Rogue goes rogue, when she is in Captain America's face, or following along with his government orders instead of supporting mutants when shit has hit the fan and chucking his shield off into the distance. She is like the ultimate badass. She's going to keep you safe. And when things calm down, she's going to be a great time to hang out with. So it's Rogue for me.
Great pick. That was my number 3 overall. Ouch.
That was
Great
my number
pick.
2 as well. Very devastated by this choice, but Rogue is really an MVP this season. I think just a truly phenomenal character arc in this short an episode season, and I'm so happy that she's one of the people who got to have her original voice actress come back and voice her. A lot of folks, a lot of the original cast was moved on to other roles. Gambit became Cable. Jean Grey became Val Cooper. I mean, phenomenal performances and phenomenal roles. But yeah, I'm just so happy that we had Lenore Zahn in that role. Just fantastic.
Yeah, such a great voice in the series as well. That like internal raspiness definitely may have been able to have been recreated, but also very grateful that she was back to play herself.
Well, John, you've got the 3 pick here, sir. So what will it be if not Rogue?
Well, I may be giving away a little bit of where I was going to go here. I was going to create some drama in my car. So I'm going with Magneto first. Magneto is my number 1 pick. This is a very compelling character in this particular series. Like, such a sympathetic villain, anti-hero, for so many different reasons. I could not look away. In many ways, beyond Rogue's character arc, it feels to me like X-Men '97 belongs to Magneto in a lot of different ways. So Magneto. Rogue was going to be my second pick. Going to put him in a car. Maybe a Gambit coming up third if he was still around. So we're going to go in a different direction now. But Magneto is still my number 1 pick.
Excellent pick. Thrilled for you. You got your number 1. Thrilled for me. He wasn't on my board. I don't want that metal bending gentleman anywhere near my vehicle. Can't trust him. Deep guy. Probably great at a conversation, but can't trust him. Okay, I guess that's to me then.
You're picking on the turn, Kris. What are you gonna do? You get to pick a duo here.
I get 2 in a row. Wow. Okay. Well, I think like John, I wanted to build something. I wanted to be intentional about the grouping. I love a drama fest, John. I think that's really wise, and adding Magneto in the mix is certainly going to guarantee that. I'm looking for just like a family road trip was how I was picturing this. We're going to go out and have the best time possible in this Porsche. And so I'm going to lead with Morph for my first pick. I want them in the vehicle because Logan likes Morph. Logan doesn't like anybody. Logan likes Morph. Morph has something special just as they are, right? As Morph, the original being, They are valuable and clearly well liked. So I think they're going to be a great hang. And then on top of it, I get to be like, do the thing. And then they can be anyone. And that's just a blasty blast. Right?
Do the impression where your face is the guy's face. Yeah.
Yeah. And like
Mhm.
limited access to the physical attributes. I think I heard one of the creators of the show talking about Morph's powers, and they clarified for us what exactly they can and can't do. They can't mimic the specifics of a mutation, but the base genetics, they're like physical attributes, how strong they are, how fast they are. So anywho, Morph number 1, joining Morph in the car. I want Storm. Again, I'm looking for a good time, and I believe Storm can party. Like, I believe she can be disciplined where discipline is necessary, and she is not a stiff like Cyclops. Again, sorry, I don't mean to hate on Cyclops, but she gives you all of the the values and the valor of like the good student and the leader. And then she's also not a stiff. She's also super accessible and really chill. And yeah, and if we get into some scraps, if I get a little mouthy in a bar, I've got Storm at my back on this road trip. I'd like to think I'm years past those days, but we're on a road trip. You never know. Storm in the vehicle. I mean, her story this season was fantastic. Even if it faltered a bit and felt like it was taking away at times from the main storyline, when she finally literally faced an inner demon and regained her Omega level abilities, manifested her suit back somehow, which was cool and not totally clear to me, but really awesome. So yeah, for my first two, I'll take Morph and Storm.
Incredible picks, Kris. I absolutely love this. Storm was really high up there for me. Such great leadership qualities. Someone that you want to have around, and just a true friend, and you're never going to be in danger with one of the most powerful Omega level threats.
I love Morph. Morph is a fantastic character. Morph is one of those characters I think I'm looking forward the most to seeing in season 2, because although they have kind of this arc inside the Mr. Sinister piece, I don't know if that's clear for folks who hadn't seen the original series, that, Morph dies and Morph kind of comes back to life or is cloned and all kinds of weird things happen. And so Morph has a past with Mr. Sinister and kind of faces it. And this all happens in the context of the rest of the show. But I want more Morph front and center because of all of the things that you said, Kris. I'm very excited to see more and more. Right, and then I guess I get to, in the snake pick, I get to go again. So
you're back on the board.
Back on the board. So no Rogue and Magneto drama or Gambit drama in the car for me. I could pick Gambit, but I don't think that's fair without Rogue. I don't think I want to put Magneto and Gambit together. I'm not really thinking about who's having a good time in the car. In fact, I think I want them to have a bad time in the car. I'm not necessarily thinking about powers. I'm looking for maximal melodrama. And so I think the obvious answer, which I'm not going with here, is Professor X. I think they'd have a lot of their old arguments again. But no, I'm actually going to choose Cyclops to hang out with Magneto.
Oh, okay.
I love Cyclops, as I mentioned very early on, when everyone loved Wolverine. I love Cyclops. And to be clear, the original animated series Cyclops is kind of a wet blanket. Not the most exciting character. Sort of, older brother who makes sure that everyone is kind of doing okay, but he's just very sad all the time. And his girlfriend / wife keeps getting killed or resurrected or cloned and killed and resurrected. All these things keep happening to him in his life, and his child is all these terrible things happen. But in X-Men 97, I feel so strongly that they really gave him a much more nuanced sense of who he is. He is troubled, and it's understandable why he's troubled. And he also doesn't have to be so perfect, or he tries to be, but he breaks sometimes. He breaks in an interview on TV. He just wants to be the perfect student and carry on Professor X's dream, but can he live up to it? And does he want to live up to it? And in one of his climactic moments that really gets glossed over, Professor X has sort of won this duel with Magneto, and he's sort of trying to take over his mind, as he sort of later does anyway. And he's doing this to turn back on the electricity, which will turn back on the Sentinels if the Sentinels have not been dealt with. And Cyclops says, no, I am choosing that we're not going to do that. I am choosing mutants and the other team for just a little longer. And I love that for Cyclops. And I love that that is his moment of rebellion, but not just rebellion, his moment of choosing what's right in a complex web of so many different motivations.
Yeah.
And I love that Cyclops is kind of the de facto leader for a year. Magneto comes in and takes it from him. And how do they build a relationship? Can they build a relationship? They seem to have come to an understanding by the end of episode 2, but they still don't like each other. So I am here for whatever leader-based drama they are going to be pulling off or discussing in the car.
Great pick for the drama. Great pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be talking about that interview scene later, but that's one of my favorite moments in the entire 10 episode run. So I'm so glad you called that out. Now I kind of feel like the panelists are just, trying to be kind to me, trying to make sure I have a beautiful night. I can't believe I get to pull off the feat that I'm about to pull off here. But I've got Rogue. I had a riding shotgun, but listen, I'm going to let her share the back seat with her guy Gambit. I love this couple. I don't know if I'm cool enough to be driving around with them in my car, but I love them. I think we can get into some good trouble together. They're not going to get pushed around, right? They're not going to be mistreated, but they're not going to jump straight to a selfish decision or a reckless decision. But they are not going to back away from the fight when we need to stand up for something, when we need to stand up for what is right. And that is a crew that I can hang with. And if I can pick up any fashion sense along the way, that might be great for me in the long run. Just two of the coolest folks in the world. Can't believe I got to do this. Rogue and Gambit, could not be happier.
I'm so glad you got to do it, buddy. I did leave Gambit for you, hoping this would happen. I was scared with John between us because he was building the drama mobile, and I was afraid he was gonna go there. So I'm thrilled that this worked out in your favor. They're gonna be a great time together, buddy.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, naturally, when I made my first pick, I even kind of made credence to the fact that, you could leave the top 3 on the board and kind of go to that fringe pick to get maybe some value. So obviously I realized, down and back, I would lose on someone big, and he's obviously a big one, as is Rogue. Much to your point, fashion sense. Kris was saying, if you're, you stop at a bar along Route 66 on the way to Vegas or wherever you're headed for your summer trip, how do you not bring the old man? Give me Logan. Let's go.
Yeah.
That old raggedy bomber leather jacket, just no value like it. Sipping a whiskey with my buddy Nightcrawler and just, rehashing the old days. He's seen it all. He's been here since the beginning. He's fought in wars. He's seen empires crumble. The man has quite literally done it all. And for the sake of what I had originally said, you had just touched on, the value he adds to the car. Obviously, him and Nightcrawler fight side by side, both in this series, which we see, which is probably, I won't go too in depth on that now. I think we'll touch on it later, but how good is that scene? And then, just the ability for the other sake of, just conversation and, back and forth. If he's willing to let me into that bubble like he did Morph, I think there's a lot of value to be had there with conversation. So Logan and we're good. Wolverine, my man.
All right. Now, Blake, you are picking on the turn, so you get to complete your trio first. So you've already got an incredible pairing here. I love your draft up to this point. But yeah, you're gonna have the richest pool of characters to pick from as you fill out that last seat in your Porsche.
I forgot. I quite literally, while picking, I was like, I'll go for someone I know won't be here when it comes back around. I forgot I get to go twice here. That's actually crazy. I was gonna pick. I was gonna pick who I'll pick now later because I felt she might still be on the board. I will go with Emma Frost.
Nice.
Big Emma Frost fan, both in the movies and the series. Her second Omega level power coming to light in this series when Genosha is destroyed and she comes about not only okay, but realizing she's now invulnerable in her diamond form. Just such an unbelievably cool character. Just in this series alone, without going into her whole backstory, just such a very cool character. A telepath her whole life, and then later finds out she has this ability to just become completely indestructible. Just very cool. And then overall, in this series, she does a very good job of hashing out who she is kind of as a person. in a very quick way. She's not in it for a huge amount of time, but when she is, I think she makes a big enough deal that you're like, all right, cool, I know who she is, and yeah, so that's my 3.
Great, great Porsche you have filled up, my friend. Awesome last pick, especially noting that she did get to go through that metamorphosis, right, in this series and add the diamond form. So cool.
Yeah. Do you think Emma could get Logan to forget about Jean Grey?
Yeah.
I I think if anything were possible based on just what we have seen, maybe, but his memory seems to be a long and strong one, much like his healing factor.
Yeah. So that brings us back to me. I'm actually like kind of shocked by my next pick, because if I were going on my favorite characters on my way into X-Men 97, there are a few people I'm not going to pick who might have been at the top of my list before. Like, I'm not going to pick Charles Xavier. Um, Listen, I'm not fully down on Charles Xavier. He was originally one of my favorite guys. I'm a teacher. I love books. I love the cerebral guy. I love the person who's going to solve the problem without a weapon. That's very appealing to me. Um, but but having not read the comics, he was downright megalomaniacal to me at times in X-Men 97. I think I already went into it earlier. And I don't know if I trust Charles the way I did in 1993 or whatever. So I'm not going to pick Charles. I'm also not going to pick my guy Hank McCoy, Beast. I love this character. Another one of my favorite characters.
Big
But
beast
they
guy,
gave
yeah.
him, yeah, he's supposed to be this big literature guy I can talk books with. But for a guy that loves books, his bedside manner left a lot to be desired this season. When he breaks that news to Madeline that she's not the original Jean Grey, like, it felt like he was actively trying to make that play out in the worst way possible. Like, I'm hoping for better things for both of those guys in the next season. If I had a different duo up to this point, I don't think I would pick this character next. This is another character I have some qualms with, but I'm going to go with Forge. Now, I don't particularly love the way he withheld some very important information from Storm as they were kindling a romance together. That was a pretty rough move. However, I'm going to trust Storm's agency, and he seems to have regained her trust. And I think she's a strong enough person. I don't think that she's getting played. I think I'm going to assume off screen Forge made the proper amends he needed to make. They came to an understanding. And Forge is someone I can have a great conversation with. He can dream up an idea, and eventually he's going to come up with the solution. So the reason he's perfect in my Porsche is not just to chat with me while Rogue and Gambit are flirting, but he is going to come up with a way to solve this physical barrier between them and make life better for Rogue and Gambit. So that's how I'm going to put those powers to work, and that is my Porsche. I'm feeling proud of it.
Beautiful pick. Love it. I was thinking Forge from the very beginning, and I think we all kind of did what you did and made our 3 part make sense. So he rounds your group out very well. I like it a lot.
So glad we had a chance to celebrate Forge. Yeah, I don't, doesn't have a big place in the overall narrative of the season as far as like the main conflict with Bastion. So I'm glad we got to chat about him. Great pick, buddy.
I was gonna say I love that episode too. We talked earlier about if we had a favorite, if what have you. That episode's really good. Him and her back at his homestead is fantastic. It's good. It's good media.
Yeah, so I get to fill up my car now, and a lot of the trios that I was going to go with aren't really on the table anymore. And I don't really want to go with sort of like your Jean and Cyclops and Magneto. That doesn't really seem to work. Or your Cable and Cyclops and Magneto. Some of it's just that was already on the show, and I don't know what that dynamic with Magneto is necessarily going to be bringing to the table. Same thing with Madeline. If I'd been thinking differently, instead of going for Magneto first, maybe I would have done a Cyclops, Jean, Madeline car, because I think that would have been delightful. But and also again, Professor X, I don't think I want these like 3 leader figures in the car together. So there was a part of me that was going to draft Leech here and bring out some sort of vulnerability in Magneto, but I'm just going to go with Beast. And while I don't think Beast necessarily goes with this, and I suspect I'm taking Beast from Kris, but that's all right. I'm thinking of the fun car ride, because Cyclops and Magneto are going to be mad at each other a lot. And you know what you need when two people are mad at each other in a car? Someone to just kind of give you a bunch of like wisdom and quotes for no particular reason to fill the silence. I think that would make for fantastic television. And I also think that that would be a not as dramatic car as I was hoping for, but still a delightful one. So yeah, Beast, Cyclops, and Magneto. That's my car.
Oh, my stars and garters. I can't believe you did that to my co-host.
He did do it to me. John,
I'm so sorry.
No, it was the right pick. You said everything I wanted to say about Beast for my fun car ride. I think that your drama mobile could use a little wisdom, so he's all yours. Enjoy the big blue fella. That does leave me to fill out my Porsche, and I had her written down as a potential. I was not going to go here if I could have had Beast instead, but I'm happy to add Jean Grey, the original, to the vehicle. Not only is she a character who just deserves to be shouted out for her power, not just her mutant ability, but her strength of character. This is a person who continues to go through so much, is constantly at the center of the drama, either the interpersonal drama or the high-stakes villain drama. Jean must be exhausted, and so she deserves a break. After being usurped by a clone and having her husband have a child without her, she deserves a little time away. She deserves a road trip. And I love the sisterhood that was illustrated ever so briefly between Storm and Jean in this series.
Mm-hmm.
Their communication was so moving. That relationship was so important to both characters that to have them together on this road trip, to be able to enjoy this sisterhood with Morph in the mix, adding whatever third to it that they want them to when they want it, would be a blasty blast. And I would be thrilled to be along for the ride. So thrilled with how this rounded out. Glad you got Beast. Glad I got Jean. We're going to have a good time this summer.
Yeah. Thank you so much for protecting that sisterhood, Kris. I suppose you could argue it was cheesy, but I absolutely loved that exchange. Make them mind your weather, sister.
So good.
And make them weather your mind. Was
That
such a
quote
great exchange.
That quote was wild. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that's like now you're going to get it.
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our X family draft. We each filled up a Porsche, and I think we each did that in a really loving and thoughtful way. We were trying to do what was right by our characters. Yes, John did create some drama, but I think those characters might still grow from the interaction. So I'm feeling optimistic for them. Sometimes you need a little conflict. Speaking of conflict, let's dig into why this series really worked, right? It was melodramatic. It was heavy-handed. We were flying through storylines, but it really hit. Marvel fans ate this up. The four of us loved it. It got all sorts of positive buzz. So the next question I just want to dig into regarding this series is, what did it tap into? What was a thematic element from this season that really connected with you and felt relevant to the world we live in today?
This is maybe as heavy as we're going to get on media lits, because it is so real. It is so right now. Nationalism in its many forms, populism, is on the rise in our world. Those things work because people are afraid. People make really dumb decisions in the face of their fear. People cling to what's familiar. They resist what's different. And so, to watch yet another X-Men story play out where it's this sense of the future being stolen away from humanity by the mutants, they're being replaced in history, makes almost zero sense. That reaction as the human race makes so little sense that it makes sense in light of our lived reality in the way people behave in the face of fear, especially a fear that threatens their way of life. And so this may have been a nostalgia fest of a show, but it was still hitting on what has always been the heart of the X-Men. It's like, how do we as different people coexist? And what do we do with our fear?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful, Kris. Kris, you just gave me some really heavy words. Can you hit me with a little bit of a fun reaction as well? We often ask our guests, what's a souvenir they might take home from a live action set. We're talking about an animated series here. So after each of us gives our nice little thematic feedback and how this hit us on a personal level, I'm also going to ask everyone to tell me, what is a still shot from this animated series that you would love to have like framed, signed by the appropriate voice actors and or animators, directors, etc., just to like put up on your wall and cherish forever? What's a moment you'd just love to immortalize from X-Men 97?
So glad I get to answer this question first because I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat because we do that on this show. Rules are made to be broken. So I'm going to choose like a still image, but it's going to be like one of these little hologram images, right? So when you move it moves, and so it's sort of motion, because I want the moment that Rogue just hucks Cap's shield into the distance. So I want a little holographic image that I can just constantly watch it backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. She grabs the shield, she turns, and it's flying away. That moment was beautiful for her character, and it was important to help us understand the way these heroes relate to authority as compared to how Captain America relates to authority. And so give me that all day. Rogue just chucking that symbol of authority that is Cap's shield.
What a perfect answer, Kris. That was certainly on my list of options. Although I was going to maybe go with Rogue, like peering over the shield with like just those angry eyes. But yeah, phenomenal pick. Love the holographic sort of moving image idea. Blake, I'm going to go to you next. First, I'd love to hear like thematically, what's something about this series that hit for you in 2024 that made this really feel relevant and valuable?
Sure. Kris kind of already touched on at least the fringe of where I connected the most. As mentioned in my incredible intro done by Kris himself, I am a police officer, and there's a lot in this series that obviously touches reality in our own lives, and then just in general in our political view of the world and how we deal with change and war and all that as humans. Yeah, I think the time we spend on Genosha as an audience, we see, the imminent fear of like what is coming to them. We very quickly realize how powerful and how real the threat of what is coming at them, is. It's not just our base level sentinels. It's not just one of us will take care of it. You just that like impending doom and how dark it became so quickly, and even just in general, like they knew they were marked and needed their own space to be. Just because not everyone is as accepting of other people and other ways of life. So just Genosha in general, and then the way that the undoing of Genosha in that main episode where it does all come crashing down and the bubble does pop. I guess was definitely a big theme for me. Just both as a protector of civilians and the general public, and my duty to serve everyone, and then just in general the way that I guess ultimately police are viewed in today's world. People view each other in today's world. People view each other in today's world. Really a lot of both beautiful and obviously very ugly parallels to real life, and that really hit home for me in this series as well.
Yeah, Blake, thank you so much for sharing that, right? Because when we're talking superheroes, we're often talking about folks who are engaging in some sort of like law enforcement, not in a formalized governmental sort of way. Uh, but right, like there are all these questions that come up, and the responsibility being so huge. There's that magnifying glass on you. So makes me feel great to know that that's like relatable to being in that sort of position, that there's something there for you is well as with people having a different experience, like that it could be that universally like appealing and meaningful to folks. So I'm really fortunate we got that perspective from you. Now, Blake, I think might be able to hang on with us for a minute or two more, but I just want to make sure that we give him a proper and appropriate send off. So we're not wrapping up the pod just yet, but since Blake might have to check out a minute early, Blake, I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on Media Lit. It was really a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for Equilibrium in person, and just hear some really phenomenal insights on the X-Men.
No, for sure. Happy to be here, and look forward to both listening to this episode again and rehabbing some of the laughs and some of the great insight we all shared back and forth. And would love to be on the pod in the future if invited to go from podling and whatnot. It was
Yeah.
Oh, you're already a podling, my friends. If you've listened to at least 5 seconds of one episode, you're a podling in my book.
You've listened, you've contributed, you are as podling as any of them, my friend. Thank you for
Top
joining
tier.
us, buddy. So great to hang with you. So great to have this chat and get your perspective. Before we let you go, I got to know, what is your one signed still image from the series?
Yeah. So I was gonna throw it in before I slap the laptop shut. Anyways, so I know I already kind of cheated. I already kind of threw my cards on the table earlier. My man Logan and my dude Nightcrawler. That fight scene where Nightcrawler kind of famously just has that sword in his tail, and they're blinking in and out, and he's grabbing Logan. There's one in particular move that I absolutely lost my mind over. He grabs Logan and starts to kind of like pull him back. And as he pulls him back, they both blink, and Logan comes back out of like wherever they blink to for a second, mid swing, and just absolutely dominates some guy with his claws. That exact freeze, and then both their signatures on that. Wolverine and Nightcrawler would be cool. Mine won't be holographic, but if I can 1A, I would say the one quick cameo, because we already touched on Captain America, which was so cool and such great fan service. The 1 second Daredevil's on there and goes, "Huh?"
Oh yeah,
If I could have two, that would be my second. But
love that. Love that.
That would be it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can bamf out of here, Nightcrawler style.
Thank
Love you, buddy.
A pleasure as always. Love you too, brother.
All right, so I'm actually going to go next with my sort of thematic connection within this show. And I think this definitely overlaps with what Kris had to say a little bit earlier. And now this is something I already knew about the X-Men, but the way X-Men 97 managed to speak to like every single marginalized community in existence, like absolutely blew my mind because, listen, I am a cis het white man. I have never really significantly had to live in a moment where, my opinion, my perspective, my presence was not sort of like expected. And I don't think that was anything I ever really had to grapple with as a teenager or even maybe the very beginning of my young adulthood. And it's something I've been really committed to in my life and in my reading, my research, my teaching, trying to better understand and empathize with. And this show is able to do that in so many ways. I think, perhaps the clearest example is just, the way the X-Men can be a stand-in for the queer community. Bo DeMeo, was the original creator of the show, was fired off of the series just before it aired. But has been very active on social media since the show went live. He shared all sorts of valuable insights into what he was going for in the show. I know he expressed a real personal connection with the character of Magneto. And this line he finds himself sitting on, trying to toe the line between creating change, like demanding what needs to improve, while also like living this idealized vision of a Charles Xavier, where why can't we find this peace and all just get along? Perhaps one of the most interesting things he had to say was after episode 5 aired, the episode Remember It. This is where Genosha is destroyed. We lose Gambit. Bo DeMeo talked about that being sort of his pitch for the entire series. like kind of we're going to hit our audiences with these member berries of this show that we loved in this time that was simpler for us, not because the times really were simpler, but because we were kids and maybe less aware of it in the way that I just spoke to. And then really bowl us over with this episode in a way that's going to hit us. And he spoke to things like September 11th being a paradigm shift, shaping his view of the world. And in terms of queer communities, he talks specifically about having spent time at the Pulse nightclub. And he talked about the tragedy of the shooting that went down there in that location. To be able to suck us into that moment in Genosha for a place that seemed like a safe space to become the most dangerous place possible. It was really moving, and I think about like any text I've read about the experience of someone in a marginalized community. I found myself thinking so much about like famous documents from like the American Civil Rights Movement, and all these sorts of different double standards and challenges, and this expectation to always be peaceful and patient and wait for things to come to you, yet still continuing to be punished over and over again, and those rewards never coming for the gains to always be perceived but never really handed out in a material way. And that really hit me. And the place where it really came to fruition for me was in, I think it was episode 8, when we get this backstory on these new Sentinels, and you just find out that a huge percentage of people have just been reprogrammed because deep down they're not comfortable with this mutant situation, and maybe they're not comfortable to say it out loud, and maybe they even like to flirt with Beast after a news report. Yet they activated this transformation, and that was just so dark, so real, so biting, and it just generated so much empathy for me in that moment. So yeah, I know that was a lot to try to cover in one little monologue, but I think that's the gist of it. That's why all those little mistakes in the series don't matter to me, because it was so powerful on those levels.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think a lot about those dancing scenes. Like I did not read that episode as anything to do with the Pulse nightclub shooting until I read Bodemeo's piece on it. And then you go back and rewatch it, and there are just so many scenes of people joyfully dancing before this horrific event happens, including as it's happening, but even just as they're going to the city, you have all these people who are just living their lives. The Morlocks don't have to live in the sewers because they can be themselves out loud and dance and use their powers as magic. And it's just such a devastating sort of connection to have made in the art that he wanted to make there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now just I want to shift to like this fun question about like what's a still shot that I would pick, but I kind of lucked out in the sense that it actually ties back to what I'm talking about here. Once I lost my Rogue Captain America moment, I was really leaning between a couple of different moments related to dancing. One moment I considered was from the very first episode. While Jubilee was not served particularly well overall in the series, there's this like absolutely dope shot of her making these little like rave lights in a bar. And it was a really beautiful bit of animation. And it was like, in watching that first episode, it was like the first moment where it hit me, where it was like, wow, they're like giving me the 90s, but they're also upping their game, both in terms of animation and everything else. But my shot, it's gonna be that floating dance between Rogue and Magneto in Remember It, where they've lifted above the floor. And it seems like maybe the plan is going to go forward. It ultimately ends with Rogue realizing that this is not worth walking away from Gambit over. But, we don't begrudge her this moment with Magneto and this desire to have this relationship that could be physical and based in some other things. And we even know that although Gambit is in it and he's struggling, he was mostly trying to be pretty stand up and accepting about it. He's not trying to take this away from Rogue. And it really is a beautiful moment, and all the more beautiful knowing that she's going to emotionally turn back toward Gambit in the end. So that's my moment.
Such a great pick. So glad you celebrated Gambit being so cool in that moment, because like the way he's written sometimes, the way he speaks to women about women, you might take him as a chauvinist or a womanizer, but there's not an ounce of toxicity in that dude when it counts here. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Shout out to Jubilee too. I remember that rave moment where she's given us rave dancing, but instead of glow sticks, it's just her own mutant power. Truly dope animation.
Yeah. Now, finally, John, I'm going to hand things over to you. I went to you last because I had been thinking all these thoughts thematically about X-Men 97, but, you know, as someone who's such a connoisseur of the comics, as someone who's an academic and a researcher, you know, you were sending me some of my favorite insights on the show, and including one particularly great academic article. I know that's going to at least somewhat factor into what you want to share with us about relevant themes. But I just wanted to like clear the track and give you some runway to hit this, because I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. What's a thematic connection from X-Men 97 that felt relevant to you in 2024?
That's, again, as always, very, very kind of you to say. And I know we're talking about very dark themes, and this is going to continue that trend because X-Men 97 really digs into a lot of these themes. You've already talked about the Pulse nightclub shooting and sort of queer readings of X-Men in general. And historically, there's always been so many ways to read X-Men, and that X-Men has been explicitly written with the perspective of the queer community, of Black communities, and all kinds of other groups in mind. And one of the things I really wanted to reflect on, and that I've really been thinking a lot about as I've been watching, or as I watched X-Men 97, was Magneto as a character, and Magneto as a Jewish character specifically. So I want to talk about an amazing article I read a couple months ago. It's titled "The Judgment of Magneto" by Asher Elbine for Defector.com. And in the article, Asher connects Magneto's history as a Jewish character and mutant to the real world history of Israel. And the ongoing conflict right now in Israel and in Gaza. And I think it's a particularly helpful article to understand the Magneto of X-Men 97. And this article does not go into X-Men 97 at all. It is exclusively a reflection on the history of the character up until sometime in 2024 in comic lore specifically, as well as the history of Israel. But it does a really good job of making those connections. And then we can see where X-Men 97 gets its ideas for this particular iteration of Magneto. And so, you know, for me, seeing Magneto's history in comics laid out in parallel with the evolution of Israel as a state, with the rise of right-wing politics, certainly around the world, but in Israel in particular, and with the discomfort of the North American Jewish community in the face of sort of past Israeli government's actions, and certainly its current actions. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of ambiguity, discomfort, anger, division. And reading this particular article was really helpful and clarifying for me as a Canadian Jew. And, you know, I'm not an expert in Israel. I'm not an expert in Judaism, not an expert in X-Men lore, even though I certainly love the comics. But yeah, I really do think that this article can shed some light. So I just want to read a few quotes from it to really sort of dig into some of these ideas. So you know, since Magneto first appeared, and he was the villain in the very, very first issue of X-Men in 1963. Quote, Magneto spent 6 decades of Marvel publication oscillating between supervillainous heel, messianic terrorist, swaggering nationalist, and increasingly heroic anti-fascist. He stood trial for crimes against humanity and tried his hand at state building. He's variously fought against, allied with, and led the X-Men. So all of this is in the comics. All of this is stuff that we've seen. You know, the trial of Magneto is an arc in the comics, and Magneto leading the X-Men. It's a thing that has happened. And these different writers have put different kinds of perspectives and different kinds of approaches to the need to protect mutant kind and put them on Magneto. And really, one of the things that I think is worth talking about here is that Elbine, the author here, frames the article around a recent miniseries titled The Resurrection of Magneto, in which Magneto, who is Marvel's, quote, most famous Jewish character, counts his many sins, tortured by the fear that he's wasted his life on a poisoned dream. As we've already talked about a bit, the comic arrives at a fraught time when it debuted earlier this year. Israeli bombs have been falling on Gaza for 3 months. It's a low and shameful moment, and it's also one that suits Magneto entirely too well, a distillation of the ambiguities and anxieties of American Judaism as it reckons with the sacrifices made to the promise of never again, and the increasingly fraught question of what that actually means. I'm always thinking about this question of never again. I was raised in, a very sort of progressive space, I think, and for me, never again has always meant never again for anyone. We talk about the Holocaust and we talk about the Rwandan genocide, and these ideas are connected across cultures and histories. But one thing that I've been learning recently in the last few years is that for some people, never again means specifically never again for the Jews. And with that understanding, I think I'm really starting to I mean, I don't want to say I'm really starting to understand. It's obviously geopolitics are complicated, and this is one of the most complicated geopolitical situations. But I think I'm certainly understanding where some of the underlying tension comes from, where some of what some of the beliefs motivating the actions here in Israel are, and the ongoing war in Gaza. And again, I think that particular kind of never again for our group, never again for mutants, is specifically motivating Magneto. And he sort of comes out and says it in a number of episodes. In the second episode, he taught, we talk a lot about viewers, I think, watching this talked a lot about Magneto is right. And there are a lot of ways in which I absolutely think Magneto is right, and I empathize with him. And it's kind of weird to be talking about Magneto as, maybe sometimes a right-wing nationalist for a mutant state like Genosha, and sometimes as a heroic anti-fascist. He's a complicated character. And this version of the character on the show, I think, does walk some of those lines. But yeah, when he gets to the UN for his trial, he says, as a boy, my people's homes were burned to ash because we dared to call God by another name. Then my people hunted me with those who had once hunted them. I was a freak born a mutant, an abomination to their misnamed gods. In history's sad song, there is a refrain: believe differently, love differently, be of different sex or skin, and be punished. We sing this song to one another, the oppressed become oppressors. And I mean, that quote really speaks to me both about the real world challenges we have here and also about what Magneto's actual ethos and goals are. He even says never again, right? He says, as I've said too many times before, never again. Today I have saved you from your own, for an old friend has challenged me to remember this view of Earth, how vast it is versus how small we make it. Charles Xavier entrusted me with his dream, and it does not ask you to love or embrace my kind as your own, but merely to accept that this is a shared world with a common future, and that my kind, like yours, have the right to live in it. I am trying to be better. Please do not make me let you down. And guess what? They made him let them down. And so, yeah, I mean, I could say so many more things. This article really digs deep into the history of this character and the different writers, but I think I'll certainly stop there after reading a whole bunch of quotes and just say that I find Magneto on this show to be such an interesting and compelling character. He is a Holocaust survivor. He brings that to the table at Genosha explicitly multiple times. He talks about Moses not getting to see the promised land, but he gets to see it. And that is such a specific biblical allegory. And then he also talked, like, in the middle of the genocide, he has flashes not just to what's happening on Genosha, but to the Holocaust. And he rises up and he shouts never again. And he doesn't shout never again. He says they will be avenged. And it's unclear who he's talking about in this moment. And he throws a train at the master mold, which I don't think is a coincidence. I think this is an item that has a very particular symbolic value in the context of the Holocaust and the context of Magneto as a character. So, Magneto's a cynical guy. Professor Xavier is a naive guy. They both want the same thing, but Magneto has taken the view that never again for me and my people. And I'm going to stop there. And I just want to throw it back to both of you to see if you have any thoughts. This is obviously very heavy stuff.
I was so grateful that you shared this article ahead of the episode. It was a great read. And mostly I was just encouraged that somebody was challenging us to take the story this seriously and to really think this deeply, right? This series, these 10 episodes were really wise to take what is really the core question of the X-Men, right? That core conflict between Charles and Magneto is, if Charles Xavier's position is never again for anyone, and Magneto's is never again for us, right? That's the core question. To center that so heavily on Magneto and almost remove Charles from the conversation for this season, I thought worked really well, especially in light of the particular world events that we're living through right now in this moment as this show was debuting. For Magneto to have arced through that to have come to a place on the other side where he has finally seen enough horror and maybe really had total destruction in his grip for the first time. He finally came to a place where he's ready to embrace a never again for anyone mentality. And it's particularly interesting that this is all hinging on a Jewish character, because not every character's moral compass is religiously based, right? And maybe Magneto's isn't either, but as you said, he's the most famous, quote unquote, Jewish character in Marvel. I don't know what Charles's faith is like. I don't know where his moral compass comes from. I don't know what makes Charles want to choose never again for anyone. But that is wisdom for a sustained future of hope, right? It can't be that the oppressors become the oppressed, or rather the oppressed become the oppressors. That does not work. It just perpetuates things, right? So at some point, we have to come to this conclusion, never again for anyone. And the Jewish people, if that is the faith that's guiding you, if that is where you're getting your wisdom from those texts, the promise of their blessing was a promise that also included the idea that that blessing would flow outward to all nations, right? That Abraham's family would be established and they would become a blessing to all nations. So while they may be a chosen people, it's never been about a singular promise for a singular people. It's a people who would carry that promise forward. And so again, centering this question and this big theme on a Jewish character, I think is incredibly wise. It could have gone really poorly, but I think that the writing was sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you both articulated that so well. John, I want to thank you for bringing that article to us. But if I take one step back, I think I just want to frame the value of that article around the value of this series and the value of the X-Men overall. There aren't a lot of texts that are that available to everyone. We can tie this show back to a geopolitical conflict that I think John gave us a really good sense of how that might tie into what's happening here. But, I mentioned earlier in this podcast, or maybe it was off mic, but, Kris and I are currently developing an episode on Kendrick Lamar's Damn album. And even looking into some of the big questions that album and people's reaction to that album, some of the questions that raises about like, what conversations can we have? How can we have them? What do results look like? What expectations do we have for one another? That this show can put my mind in all of those places so well. It's just a testament to the source material and a testament for how it was framed for 2024. So I cannot wait for season 2. And I hope that they can continue to capture that magic. I hope it can continue to be fun and also have the same level of academic value and weight to it moving forward.
And, I just want to very quickly build on that because you said something that really struck me, which is, I have not felt comfortable engaging in so many ways and in so many spaces talking about Jewishness, Israel, Palestine, the war in Gaza. I think a lot of people feel like they don't know how to engage or what to say. And watching this show and reading this article, I still don't know what to say, certainly, but I think that it's helped me understand the situation a little better. It's helped me feel comfortable talking about it and engaging with my feelings about it. I'm a secular Jew who's probably to the left of many people, and that can be challenging when so many people are so are on the other side of the divide, I guess I should say. It just means so much to me that a text like X-Men 97 that is like a fun, potentially nostalgic throwback to my childhood has enabled me to engage with these feelings in this way and process them. So I'm just delighted to have been able to talk about this here, but also to have been able to watch the show and have it bring that to the table. It's interesting as you were putting this into conversation with the here's the heavy theme question, and now we're going to sort of lighten it with the screenshot or the one still image question. I realized that all the still images I'd gone for were big dramatic moments. It was like Gambit and the Master Mold completely pink with Gambit's energy, or it was the train being thrown at the Master Mold, or even Magneto standing over or sitting over Leech. But none of these are necessarily moments that maybe I do want on my wall. And I think one of the things I love the most about X-Men, as I've said, is the big, large ensemble cast and melodrama, but also the sort of, I mean, Nightcrawler talks about, your chosen family and the X-Men as a family, not just a blood family. And so there are just a bajillion shots of the whole team in this show. There's one I'm thinking of in the last episode where Bastion has arrived in the meteor, and I guess the whole team is now back together because they've also returned. Unfortunately, Beast isn't in the shop for whatever reason. He's probably in the Sentinel holding it down over Bastion, but the whole team is there ready to confront Bastion and deal with him. And I think that that's the kind of shot that I really want to think of. There are so many more throughout even in the first episode, the basketball shots of the whole team together. Those are the kinds of things that I want to, I think, hold and bring with me, and the fun parts of the show. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with a shot of the whole cast.
Love that, dude. I am so glad you mentioned the basketball sequence, because as you were laying that out, I was picturing the two in a frame together, side by side, right? The casual basketball image next to the suited up, ready for battle moment. Such a great call out.
Beautiful, beautiful. Love that idea.
Yeah. John, I think you picked the perfect tone for us to end on. I just want to thank you once again for all your great insight. You're a phenomenal panelist, and we can't wait to have you back again. John, is there anywhere folks can find you online, or do you have any work you want to share with folks?
Yeah, so I'm on pretty much every social media platform at Lost Cadence, Lost like the TV show Lost, and Cadence like the end of a musical phrase, all one word. That is a Lost reference for sure, but I also thought it was kind of cute and poetic. I have a TV blog where I write about, I'm supposed to be writing about House of the Dragon. I haven't started doing that yet, so I'll probably jump in mid-season, but it's called Serially Engaged. It's on Substack. And just happy to chat with people about any and all of these things all over the internet.
Awesome. Kris, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, John, thanks again for joining us. This was such a great chat. As always, I am on Instagram. I am at Kris_Ingersoll. That's Kris spelled like Kringle. And yeah, I've been doing some podcasting lately here with Randy on Media Lit, but also had the chance to guest host on the Should I Go See It podcast with my good buddy Bill George. Fantastic time over there chatting with them about Bike Riders and Inside Out 2. So if you want to hear more about his one sentence review, check out the podcast. And we've done some Batman podcasting. No real spoilers, but stay tuned for more to come there. And that's all for me tonight. Thanks, folks.
And can I just add that Kris absolutely killed it on Should I Go See It? So, please go in, check that out, hear about the films, and, also hear about Kris being a body double for Tom Brady in a mattress commercial, which was one of my favorite takeaways.
What?
You are determined to get me to tell that story on this pod. Not tonight, my friend. Not tonight.
All right. We'll save it. We'll save it for another day. Yeah, I was listening and I sent Kris a text. I was like, "You need to name drop with me. I know that you are cool and not an obnoxious name dropper, but I would like to be name dropped too, please." No, but anyway, Kris, as you all know, if you're listening, you're the best. Perhaps I'll cut all this. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
That was fun.
I am your host, Randy Elaine. You can find me on Twitter at Mr_Elaine, ALLAIN. I've got links to all the websites. I've got links to our Media Lit social media handles. We're on Twitter at Media Lit Pod. And we've got our website there. So I think I just want to beg all of you to send us your thoughts, your emails, your opinions. We'd love to read some of your takes on the air. I think we missed something. We'd love to get that into our next episode and into the next podcast. You can also find me over at thepopbreak.com. I'm doing a lot of writing on House of the Dragon. I've been covering that week to week. I'm back on the Bluey beat because we just got 8 minisodes of Bluey. So I keep thinking I'm on Bluey retirement, but then they hit us with more content, and I'm happy to see that situation continue to unfold.
Give us the healers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would be remiss if I did not mention my other podcast, Every Pod You Cast, over on the Pop Break podcast feed. And be on the lookout for Pod of Doom, where we are going to move on from the Police and talk about the discography of Black Sabbath. All right, that does it for Media Lit. We'll see you next time.